Hello everyone. In this tutorial, this is our objective for today. We are going to build the bar graph. As you could see, data and graph can be seen. Horizontal and vertical graph can be shifted, so the X and Y legends are moved accordingly. Similar to that, we have pie graph where pie or donut chart can be implemented, graph and data. Next, we have the bump graph where you can build area bump or the bump graphs, and you can change the color scheme depending on your need. Next, we are going to build the funnel, which has horizontal and vertical design, and you can also build the color scheme into your funnel graph. Finally, we are going to have the bullet graph. In bullet graph, you are going to have the various implementations of these color schemes added into it, and all of that code is available for you in component base, so you could integrate this whole code wherever it is applicable. So this is pure hands-on lab. I started everything from the scratch code and I implemented this whole code step by step. So if you are a beginner, you can start everything from scratch, but if you are an expert, then you can try to jump into the certain chapters in this video wherever you would want to see the implementation of a particular graph. Looking into this tutorial, you can also implement any other graph available in NIVO library as well as explained into the storybooks, and you can follow my method and you can implement that also in your code, even I didn't explain that. The code available in this project is all located into this CoreUI NIVO graphs folder in this public code repo. The starter code is the empty code where I started everything, and final code is the code where I have completed everything. So if you are a starter, you want to use this tutorial as hands-on lab or a step-by-step guide or workshop, please follow the tutorial and work in the NIVO starter where I started myself. Or if you are an expert, you just want to get very quickly what is going on, pull this code, clone it, and just run the CoreUI NIVO final folder, npm install and npm start, and you are good to go. That's all you really needed at this point. So that's all I had for you in this tutorial introduction. So let's get started. Let's have a quick introduction about the NIVO graph library. So NIVO library is based on D3 and React. We are at the NIVO website here, and as you can see here, there are a variety of graphs available within the NIVO library. So we can go look into the various components. So two things you need to know about NIVO before you start. So NIVO library is divided into components. It means you do not need to have the full library added to your project. You start with core, NIVO core, and depending on your project need, you can select a particular component depend on your need. So you are going to have really very lightweight graphics library in your project. Otherwise, some libraries, they just try to create the bulk graph library for you, and even if you are using one or two graphs, you end up pulling the whole graph library. So that is not really good. So NIVO is really very, I would say, smart in terms of only wants you to keep what is needed for your project. Next, as you could see here, that there are a variety of components. They are available in three different mode. They are SVG, Canvas API, and wherever applicable, it also has the HTML components with few of those components. But majority of the components are available for you through the SVG. So for example, you have here the AreaBump. We can look into this example and you can go visit from here, or you can access directly from here. So here you have bump chart, which is basically you have about 4 different types of information can be packed and can be visualized using the bump chart. They also have a variation of bump. It's called the AreaBump, which is similar to that, but it shows the ranking depending on as the progress happen. And progress could be the time, or progress could be just a number. So this is one example you have. If you look into the bar, as you can see here, that this is the bar chart, which is very common, available. And if you are looking into the various variations of this bar chart, we can look into the storybook. Here, the variety of bar charts are available to see: stacked bar, stacked horizontally. There are grouped, and the grouped horizontal markers are available. You can see here custom colors are there, and as you can see here, these are the various types of bar charts you could create. Actions related with your event, if you are trying to select here. The controls are also available, but there is no control built into in this one. You can actually build the race charts within the NIVO bar charts too, custom legend and annotations, just like this. So these are the variety of bar charts available within the single bar component library within the NIVO. Similar to that, we could look into any of these charts depending on what your requirement is. So I would say that what we will do is that we will just try to take an example of different bar charts and try to integrate in our CoreUI project. So here we are at CoreUI React admin template location at the GitHub. Let's clone it, and we are going to clone it to the CoreUI NIVO graphs folder, which is the local folder for the public code repo where the project specific code will be there. We will rename it. So CoreUI, we just call it CoreUI NIVO starter. And here we have some GitHub specific file. So we are going to remove them. We don't need Git. We don't need GitHub. We don't need Git ignore. And we also do not need the Git attributes. So we have removed a bunch of unnecessary files which were not needed for us. Now we will copy the CoreUI starter to CoreUI final package. So now we have CoreUI final and CoreUI NIVO starter. Starter is the package where we are not going to work, and that will be available for anyone who would want to follow this tutorial. We are going to work in the CoreUI NIVO final folder, and that code will be pushed to the server. So that is our final code. So we will go ahead and push this code. Let me updated CoreUI NIVO. Everything is okay here. So the code is specific to this project is available here in the CoreUI NIVO graphs. So that's where the final and the starter. So they both are identical, and now we are going to work on final. We can open the CoreUI NIVO final project in the Visual Studio Code. So here is the CoreUI React admin template. So CoreUI NIVO final npm install. So while the installation is going on, let me recap what we have done. Very first, we have got this React admin template to local machine. After that, we took that template, we cleaned couple of the files, and then we created two folders, starter and final. And then after that, we have pushed the starter code and final code to the public repo. So the starter code can be used for the following this tutorial, and final will be the complete code to just check it out. Then we opened the final code in this Visual Studio Code editor, and after that we have installed the packages related with the project which we are working right now. So here is our modules are installed. So now we will start the template which is based on CoreUI React. Now we have CoreUI template open in front of us. So we are going to start working on this template. We will add one more section here similar to this for the NIVO, and we are going to add some of these graphs. So if you are new to CoreUI, here is the menu option which are visible to our right here. So what I will do, I will move this graph to our right, our editor to our left. So here is the menu option. So if you would want to change anything in our left side menu, here is the dashboard, here is the theme. So we could actually create this similar component like this here, and we will call it NIVO graphs bar pie, and we will call them NIVO bar, NIVO pie. We save, and as you could see here left side in this project, we can see NIVO graphs bar and pie. If we want to change these icons, we can call them bar chart, I remember they had chart pie, so bar chart, and let me see. So bar is added and pie is added. So icon and NIVO graphs. Let's reload. Here is the bar chart, here is the pie chart. So we could add these options, and right now the NIVO bar and NIVO pie is not added anywhere in our routes. So we need to create the component for our project, and we need to start adding them into the route along with their implementations. So like the dashboard, the implementation is here for dashboard. If we want to build our own implementation, we could create a new folder in the views, and we call it NIVO. In the NIVO, we call the implementation for bar is NIVO bar.js. Same thing, we call it NIVO pie.js. So these are the two implementations we have. And we just try to build the very basic vanilla code. So import React from React. Then we need to define const NIVO bar and this will return code, and we need to export default NIVO bar. So this is how the NIVO bar is created. And here if we want to just call it h1 NIVO bar, and we can use this to pi, so NIVO pi. So now we have implementation of NIVO bar and NIVO pi is there. Now we have to implement here NIVO bar and NIVO pi support into the routes. So here are the routes. We just call it NIVO bar, and this is coming from views NIVO, and here you could see we have NIVO bar, and if we want to do the NIVO pi, and this will be your NIVO pi. So we have NIVO bar and NIVO pi added. Now we need to integrate them with the routes. So here is the dashboard. We just call it NIVO bar, NIVO pi, NIVO bar, NIVO pi. Let's remove this because those are just benign error. They are related with prettification of the content. Let's come back to here, dashboard, try to go bar, NIVO bar and NIVO pi. So now you could see that we have added the bar and pi, but if you remember, we haven't added any NIVO library in our project. So if you remember, we did talk about that NIVO library is designed in a way that you can add whatever component you need with regard to your project requirement. So first you need to add the NIVO core, and then after whatever support you need, you can add by yourself. So we are going to install the NIVO core first. So this is our project. So we will go CoreUI, CoreUI NIVO graph, CoreUI final. We were here. We will do npm I, and we are going to choose NIVO. Oh, myself, NIVO. So it has some dependency requirements. So we just call it install force. So NIVO core should be added for our project. Then after, for the bar, we need to add support for bar. So we can look into, this is the bar chart. And in order to support the bar, you have to have the NIVO and then bar component added. So we are going to add that one too. So we will select install at NIVO with bar support. So now the NIVO bar is added, and at the same time we can also add the pi support. So at least for these two graphs, bar and pi, will be available for us to use here. So we have just added the NIVO core and bar component library and the pi component library in our project repo. So next we are going to check that can we access it at the NIVO bar. So it's going to be import responsive bar from NIVO bar. So we will actually use the NIVO bar, and it should be NIVO bar component. So here's the NIVO bar, and similar to that, it's also going to be import responsive pi, and it's going to be NIVO pi. So we have added these two. Let's reload. We do not see any issue. It means those two libraries can be used for us to build the pie and bar graph. Now we are going to make this area where we are trying to build the graph is a little more formatted. So I will be using the CoreUI component. So the very first is to start with card. So you have CoreUI card. And as you see here that CoreUI card is already imported from CoreUI React and added to the list. After we have added card, so we need to use the C card header and C card body. In the body, we can say H4, which is the header, and NIVO bar graph. And here you could see this is the NIVO bar graph, this is the header, and that will be the body. We need to give the height. So we could say height is 600 px. So this bar graph height. Now we can use this responsive bar and we will be building the responsive bar graph here. Now let's take a look into the bar graph related information in the NIVO document. So here is the NIVO, and look into the bar graph. And if we see the detailed information about the bar graphs in the storybook, variety of graphs are available: stacked horizontal, grouped, with marker, with some properties and custom tooltips. Everything is added here, horizontal. So what we are going to do is that we are going to use this detailed and code and data everything and try to build the graph in our CoreUI template. So here is a very first graph. So let's try to implement this graph in our code here. So the graph is visible here. The graph is using this data, and then the code related with this graph is implemented here. So easiest method for us is to use this graph, and we can use this code and implement both of them here. So here is the data. Let's collect the data, and I will be using data equals. So this is our data. We have implemented data here, and remember, so data is not defined. Oh, I have to make it const. So now the definition is set for this graph. Now here is the code. We have already pulled the responsive bar. So now we need to take this code which is related with graph. We add that code here. So here is the graph which is pulling this data, and this responsive bar is what we are going to implement here. Responsive bar data is equal to data, and that data will be pulled into here. So that is the data. So this data we have to define whenever we are calling this my responsive bar, and the data is be pushed into here. Here is your data. To make it more easier to understand, so we call it bar data. So this is the bar data, and this bar data is going to be passed here. So this is the bar data. Let's fix this. Data is missing in a props validation problem. So what we need to do is that we need to define the validation for this data which is being pushed here. So let's fix this problem. So what we really need is that we need to add the prop types. So let's import prop types from, and it is supposed to come prop types. So we have prop types now. And next we need to define the type of data. So here our function is my responsive bar, and then the prop is the data. Let's start. So my responsive bar dot prop types, and it's going to be the data, and the type will be prop types dot object, and is required because without data we will not be able to fix the graph. And as soon as we fix the graph, that error which was really nagging us is gone, and now we can see that even if we try to reload dashboard, that ESLint related error is completely gone, and here is our graph. So let's try to create a button here so we could create this graph horizontal and vertical just by clicking here. So let's come to our header. We will create a row. We will create the column, and we will split it into two segments. So we have two columns. First one will be using this header, and the buttons are going to be added here. So this is the place, so buttons will be in right side. So here will be, so we could define actually the width here, that how much. So we can say that for the small, just use the 6, and small use the 6 here. So this will be your graph. Let's make sure. Bar, here is our bar graph. And now we are going to build the buttons here. So we need a button group because there will be two buttons. So we can say C button group, and we need two buttons for the horizontal and vertical graph. So we can say where the here is. So let's start with creating. So we have these two, horizontal, vertical. So these are the two graph types we have, and we need to use these two graph types and split them into the two buttons, and we are going to use the C button here. So let's take this whole method, and we can take this, and now this is array, so it became a map property, can be used here. So that became our okay, and then here is the C button. Missing key props for element and iterator. So iterator is our C button, so key is value. My goodness, so much. And here is the property, make it wider, so let's make it 3 and 9. Here we can change the color combination here. So we have color and outline secondary. Okay, so now you see that color is, now we need to select which one is what. Okay, so we have this. Now we need to set these things up. So we will have horizontal or vertical, and we need to set this thing as a property. So let's try to create the state variable to manage it. So we just call it const. So we just call this and use state, and the default is the vertical. And if you look into the property here, use state is not defined. Okay, so React use state, and we look into here, the property for this horizontal is all in lowercase, so it has to be all in lowercase. So use state is here, so vertical or horizontal. Let's come back here and we will say the key is here, value is here, vertical or horizontal. So we could say active value will be value equals to vertical or horizontal. So here we have vertical, horizontal. We need to set those things up. So value is vertical or horizontal. Set vertical or horizontal, and this is going to set the value dot to lowercase. Vertical or horizontal, use state, set vertical or horizontal. We are calling here on click event, and we need to make sure let's make this lowercase, make sure we are getting this is correctly, then horizontal and vertical. Okay, so it means that value is changing, vertical, horizontal. So this change is working now. Now we can set this to our graph. So we can add one more settings call, just call it vertical or horizontal is the property here, and this property is going to be fed as a props here. So this is the vertical or horizontal, and layout will be the given value, so vertical or horizontal. And now it's gonna say that this is props validation, so we need to add the string validation here, and comma prop types dot string is required. Now you see it's horizontal and vertical. So the problem we have is that the graph x and y axis are not being changed depending on when we are creating the vertical or the horizontal graph. So let's fix this problem next. So here you could see that legends are set. So axis bottom has the country, and when we do vertical, axis bottom has the country, and axis left has the food. So we need to set this based on this property. So let's take a look. So we can say that if the value of this is vertical, it can be country, otherwise it should be food. And same property we can set to here. The difference is that if it is vertical, it should be food, otherwise it should be country. And now it's going to change here. So if it's a vertical, country and food, and the country is the AD, AE, AF. These are the abbreviations for a country. And here is the food values from 0 to 900. Let's move to vertical. As you can see, the country is correct and then food is correct. So our X and Y axes are rotating properly as the graph is switching. Now if show the data related with this graph, how we could make that happen. So let's try to add that now. Because what we are trying to do is that we are trying to add one more option here, like a horizontal, vertical, similar to that, the data and graph. So if we click data, we could see the data table related with the graph, or if we say graph, then we can see the graph. So far we have built our graph. Let's try to add a new component called the data table. Function data table, and we need to pass the table data for this. And it should be return so we should have, so we are going to use the C table, which is part of CoreUI, and then yeah, C table head, then going to be C table body. We have table head and table body, and in the table head there should be the table row. So table row will have different TD, means table cell. So we are going to add the table cells here, and then the table body, there will be dynamic row, and that's all depend on table data. And this data table will render the values in the optional section of when we are going to select the either graph or the table. So let's try to make this component here, make these 6. So one will be option graph, another will be data, and the option will be view type, and that's going to be set view type. Okay, and we do not need this right now. So we have graph, and so we need view type and set view type. View type, view type, and the default is graph. So set view type is not defined. We need to make sure set view type use stated graph. So this is set view type correctly. So we have graph and this one. So now we need to fix the code for that. So set view type graph, and here is the property. So graph and data, set view type is here. This will be our view type. Set view type looks, let me see, settings are correct. Now we need to just make sure that if the view type, and we can say in this area, the view type is graph, show this graph, otherwise show the data. So just make it data table here, and that will be the data table. So if the data, there is a data table. If the graph, there is a graph. So we have changed. Now we need to render the data table here. So for the data table, we need to import the data table here. Import data table from data table. And this data table is going to be used here. Have a table data. So table data equals to bar data. So this table data is going to have the bar data that will be fed into here. And we need to export. So data table has export. Table data is missing the prop validation, same problem. So we could do exact same thing what we have done here. So data table, import prop types from prop types, and that's going to be okay. So we have prop types. So exact same thing. What we are doing, we are taking the prop types, and as we have done here is that we validated them, and so our prop types will be very simple. Here is that because in this table data will be the object and it's required. So table data is missing. So this is the table data, and table data is, and let's try to work on this. Okay, my responsive bar is not defined. Oh, data table. There you go. React must be in scope. Graph, and here is the table. Everything is clean now. So we have table data. Now we just need to render the headers here and the body here for the table. So let's get the columns. So we need const columns, and then columns we need to get from object dot keys, and we need to get from table data dot, and that should be the first item of that. So if we look into the data, so the keys for this bar data will be all the keys, and the very first row will have all of those keys. So that's what we are trying to use into this columns. So we got columns here. Now we need to define the header here. So let's build the const table header data. Return. We are going to take this columns dot map because this is an array. So here is our map definition. Now we are going to define the value times this, and then within the table we are going to have the data. So now we got map. So this is the data object, and now this will return, and it's going to return the C table header cell, and its scope will be column, key will be data, and now it's going to take this data and trying to write here. So this data and then this table header data will be used here. And if you see here, for our table, we got the table header here. If we want to make it uppercase, we can say to uppercase. If we want to set this table bordered, striped, so this table will have the border and striped. Looks like table data dot to uppercase is a method, and here is our table. Now we need to do same thing for the table body property. So we could say const table body data, and same thing here. Okay, so this will be our table body data, and return, we could say table data dot map so that's the map. Now select this, and there you go. So this will be the cleaned property we could add. So table data which is coming, we need to take the map of table data and this will be the per row data. So let's call it row data. So every row data is going to be fed into which we need to return C table row, and inside the C table row we are going to build the each column here. So taking the columns dot app now here let's call it column ID return C table data cell value. Scope going to be column, and the value will be the col ID and the value. So we need actually the data, so row data and the column ID. And if we look into this, let's see, key is missing in the loop. So key, another key is missing. So those keys are missing, so we fix them. Now to take the table body data, here you go. So our graph and graph related data is there. So we have built this table component which could data table, we just call it data table view, otherwise it's a little confusing when we talk about data table, and we save it and then we just call it data table from data table and access it here. Perfect. So data table view, everything is okay. It's much better now. So we have fixed this. If the graph is horizontal, here is the data, and vertical. So we have completed the implementation of the graph related with NIVO bar, and now we can take a look and study the code little more to get the clear understanding. So here are the keys related with the data available in our source bar graph data. If you would want to remove a bunch of these keys, they can also be removed. So for example, if we take these three keys out, as you could see here, that what is going to do, it is going to remove those particular data related with these keys. And now your data is only belong to 3 items: donut, fries, and kebab. Rest is gone. So depending on what kind of data you have in your incoming data source, you could select the keys which you would want to create the bar graph. Let's have this, make it vertical. Index by country, so the input data is being indexed on the country. And layout we already saw, vertical or horizontal. Margin, we have left and right margin, bottom, so this is the margin. Padding for our graph. Linear scale we are using. Index scale is a band, and depending on the dot patterns, here you could see the dot patterns are defined, here the line patterns are defined, pattern lines, and the rotations, so these are the and for the fries we are using the dot patterns, and for the sandwich we are using the line patterns. So as you could see here that we have ability to show these different kinds of graph as we want to differentiate some of the incoming values Border color is there, axis, top and right. We are not using any. The bottom and the left we are using, and we have already saw that how we could switch when we change our graph from vertical to horizontal. Labels, okay. Text color, here are the legends, and here the legend height, and let me make it 30, and that's where you see that legends are moved up. So depending on how you want to keep the gap, and here is the label skip height is here. So that's those properties are related with graph itself. Skip width, legends, keys, okay, columns, directional column. And if you would want to show the legend, for example, top, and you would want to show the legend in row, you have ability to change. So for example, if you say I want to show them as a row, so legend will become row. Now if you would say you would want to set them at the top, so legend move to top, and translate x and y with height. So this is how you could switch the legends depending on where you would want to show them. Column, application, here is the area label, Nova bar chart demo, and here the. Now if you'd want to add the tooltip, let's take a look into the custom tooltip. So here is the custom tooltip, and if you would want to add the custom tooltip, we can look into how the tooltip can be added. So here is the custom tooltip code. We can bring it here. So here is the custom tooltip. So custom tooltip is already visible here, as you could see. The only thing is that there is some ESLint related error. We might need to fix them to clean the code. But here is, so we could say here the bar graph. So after we have added the bar graph and implemented various functionality related with bar graph, now it's much easier for us to add the support for pie graph now. So this is our pie graph code. We are going to come here and give our attention to the pie graph. Let's take a look the implementation of pie graph, that is here. Here is the pie graph, here is the data. Let's just follow the same method because that's way more faster here. So we could use data is equal to, so this is the data we have used. Now the code, here is the my responsive pie, and let's try to use this code related with pie graph, and we are going to use the pie here. That's our pie graph, and the data is not defined absolutely because it has to be const. Okay, we have defined that part, and here data is going to be as here, and we have to call the my responsive pie, and that is coming here. So we will be the cheap and try to add this whole code because that would be way more faster for us. Okay, and then for right now we can disable these two codes because we do not have any implementation of control, and we can also disable this whole code right now. So we got data is missing, prop validation, C cards. So we have to take these implementations and add to the pie here, and we also need these prop types, because that would be the ESLint error. So okay, now data is missing in prop validation. So let's complete the prop validation, and that was here. So we need to take this. So my responsive pi. So my responsive pi and data is actually object. There you go. So the NIVO bar graph should call the NIVO pi graph, and we just call this thing is pi data. So we are much more clear. And then whenever we want to call this my responsive pi, in the my responsive pi and data is equal to pi data, and there you go. So just taking some code from this project, we have implemented the pi graph here. And this is the pi graph, and the code review for this pi graph we can very quickly take a look. So data is fed as a prop for this component, margin, inner radius. So if we would want to change this to, for example, 1, you will see what's going to happen. This became all the way just a circle. However, if we make this inner radius to 0, you will see it became the pi. So if you would want to change inner radius to a different value, it became a donut. So now you can get an idea that if you would want to convert this to donut, you can say that if it is donut, then it should be 0.5, or if it is a 0, then it should be the full pi. So how you could say, you can say the pi type. So we can actually pass this pi type object here. So we can say if the pi type is equal to pi, then you 0 value, otherwise make it 0.5. So we need to define the pi type also. So pi type is prop types dot bool is required, and here we could say the pipe type, if we want to say pi, it became pi. If we do not want to say pi, it will become donut. So that's how you could convert your graph to pi to donut. And if you would want to set that donut and pi through a control like this, we could convert that very quickly. So if we would want to add support for data graph, we can very quickly convert this to here and enable this. So now we have data table. We can import this code related with data table, and like what we have done here is that just pass the pi data. So in pi, and we are just passing the pi data, and we need to show this button graph data and graph, and so that will give us graph or data, and we need to add support for this very first user state, graph data graph pi. Same thing we can do for this, we call it pi or donut, and that will also be set pi or donut, and by default it is pi, for example, pi or donut, Let's take this, call it pi donut, and this will become pi or donut setting, and then that setting will be set pi or donut. And so depending on pi or donut, these values will be available for us, and then this value is a pi or donut will be pi or donut, pi donut, pi and donut, pi and donut. So let's have the setup part. So value is that active is a pi and donut. It has to be 2 lowercase. Now let's reload pi donut, pi and donut. Let me see if so. If the value is, so what we need to do is that we are active, the value is going to pass if it is pi. So pi set 2 lowercase. Okay, so we cannot use 2 lowercase here, otherwise it's not matching. Otherwise we need to use the 2 camel case, and then on click, rather than here, we could actually use 2 lowercase here when we are feeding that value. Pi donut, pi donut. Now the settings are also, so highlight is also working, pi and donut. Okay, so by default is pi, so we need to set up the pi, use pi. There you go. So pi and donut, data, graph, pi, donut. So very quickly we have change our pi graph properties. So here are the fill value, as you could see here. The looking into the data, it looks into Elixir, CSS, Haskell, Hack, SAS, and here are the match. If the ID is match, put the dot dot dot. We do not have any value related with Ruby here, otherwise should be dot dot dot. See dots, and there are lines and other property, and then these legends is a bottom. If you would want to put legends on the left or right, you can make them right and call them column. So legend will be there. If you would want to say item height, little more gap, 26, there will be more gap. So your legends are there. You could change properties, symbol shape, circle, or if you want to change them circle, or let's see here, the symbol shape for the legends are legend symbol shape. If you do not define the symbol shape here, I believe, let's see. Okay, so by default they are square. If you would want to make them circle, you can keep them circle. X and Y. If we want to move more lower, let's try to add this 86. I was thinking same. So now you can see the property is going more down. So this is how you will be able to 150, or the previous value was 56. So keep it if in case if we want to change the. So you have various ways you could go ahead and change this property, and how you can go, you can look into this and look into the storybook, and here are the pie graphs. So here is a default donut, fancy slice. If you would want to change this property, if you want to make this more lift up, if you would want to say these lift ups are more, you can move them by pad angle, and I remember arc label. So these are the arc label. If you would want to thickness, if you would want to say 5, this thickness will be changed. At least we have good understanding of how we can add the pie chart in our example. Let's see what we have, and we have AreaBump. AreaBump and AreaBump. So this is the bump and AreaBump. And if you would want to implement that again, this code will be really very simple. So here is the smooth and align, start from there. So these are the bump chart. Let's try to add the bump now. NIVO bump.js, and again import React from React. That's the minimum needed. Then after we need to just call const NIVO bump, and that's where export default NIVO bump and return so this is our NIVO bump, and now we need to add the support in the routes. First we're gonna add the NIVO bump into the menu. So we will call it bump, NIVO bump, and so looking into the menu, we have bump available. Now we need to add the route. First add the component here, NIVO bump, so we have NIVO bump here. Now bump chart, and it's going to be bump pi bar pi bump, NIVO bump, and here was our table. So we could take the table from our pi. It will be faster for us to just implement that. We also need these CoreUI components. We got those two. Next we need NIVO bump. We do not really need any of these right now, so let's erase them, and here, okay, and we just call it bump graph. So pi bump. So at least we have what we need is a skeletal in terms of creating the graph. Now we can look into the code and see what is really needed for the bump. So here is the data for the bump graph. Const bump data. So we have bump data. Then let's look into the code. It's the bump, so we are actually creating AreaBump. Right. Okay. Code. So this is the bump. So we have bump and AreaBump are using the same library. So bump and AreaBump. So this is the AreaBump and this is the bump. So let's use the bump. Is the bump, my responsive bump, and that should be here, and data equals to bump data to make sure that is defined properly. So my responsive bump prop, we need to just set up these prop types we have done earlier. So you see here prop types, and we need to set for data. So that will be our object. So here we have prop types, I'm just gonna see prop types. Do we have? Oh, that's the reason. Import prop types from prop types. So now prop type object will be accessible here. So we have prop types. Oh, it's not accessible. So this should be prop types. So data. Yes, responsive bump is not defined because we are using responsive bump. So NIVO bump graph. Reload, and after reloading the data, here is our bump graph. And here in this bump graph, what we will do is that we will try to do something differently. So if you look into this bump chart, let's go look into the just bump first. There is something called the color scheme. Here you see that color scheme is very different, and there are a variety of color schemes available within the Neo library because it's using the D3. So these color schemes are defined in D3 and Neo is using them. So we are going to change the color scheme in this project. So we need a drop down which we could use to change the color scheme. So rather than putting the data in a graph, we will try to put the color scheme here. So let's try to build the color scheme. So to add the color scheme, we will use the React select component. So we could use in our project. So let's try to install the React select here. So React select. So now we could define these options for us. So we could say const scheme options are value NIVO label NIVO. And if you look into here the color schemes, so there are several schemes available, and there is paired, there is reds, blues, so let's call them reds, blues, and they also have at the bottom thing spectral. So this is a spectral, to make sure is spectral. Accent, and let's use one more, dark set, use spectral, and paired. Now we need to import the select. So import select we don't really, this is wrong selection, so we need to select this from React select. So we have select, and here are the scheme options, and we are going to add them the way we have added in our project in like right side in a drop down. So you can say const custom select options select. So default value will be the options, and the very first one options will be let's add this to here. The custom select options, they must be loaded. If there will be error, we could add them. Let's look into the build. There is a webpack. Okay, do not save. Scheme options. So these are the scheme options we have, value and labels, and default value is the option one. And if we would want to, so we need to set up the color scheme. So a variable should be set for color scheme here. So if we look into the graph, let's see how the color schemes are set. So if we are using bump, do not use the color scheme for a while. So we have color scheme. Let's try to change the color scheme first in the graph. So here implementation of the color scheme is scheme colors scheme is equal to NIVO. So that's where the schemes are set, and colors scheme is spectral. So if you would want to set this scheme to paired, here is the paired. If we would call it reds. So we know this is our scheme. It means we need to type it color scheme scheme. So color scheme will be the variable which will have the setting about the color scheme. So this color scheme is a string variable. So we will say that crop types dot string is required. So we have added the color scheme, and color scheme will be added here. So color scheme will be a color scheme variable which we will set here. So we will call it const color scheme set color scheme equals to use state, and the default value is, we just call it spectral. So this is the spectral value. Color scheme is set right now. So color scheme is used right now is spectral. If we will change this value to blues, is changing. It means our connection to color scheme is working fine. Now we need to have this custom select option should have the handle change, and the handle change will have the option, and option will just call the set color scheme, and it's gonna be the option, so it will be selected option. So selected option will be coming here, and it's going to say on change. So on change is going to call this handle color change, and it is going to have this selected option which will send the whole selected row. So we need to say whatever the value is going to be passed. So selected option, so handle change is not defined, it must be const. So now it's defined, and that's being called here, and the custom selection options. So now array versus object, prop types, data, so this is just a warning. Here are custom select options, nothing was returned from them, render nothing, so returns null. So let's fix this. Select oh, we made a mistake, and that should work for us. And that's so now blues spectral, so our color is being changed, and let's try to see where the problems are. So we have 3 3 3, so much 3 plus 3 plus 3. So now 6 plus 3, 12. Now it's perfectly fine. So because maximum you have 12 columns. Okay, so now your color scheme is also added. So that was a mistake, I accidentally put curly braces, so it should be okay. So we have added that part. If you would want to change this to color code or everything you want to do it, so I think the easiest method is that you could actually set up the formatted option, and then the formatted options you need to add is that you could add the formatted option as shown in this here. So if we could know that how these formatted options are. So if you want to format this label here to put the colors in here, there is a way you could format it. I can show you very quickly here. You can say const format select options here, and you are going to pass the value label, and if you have the color idea that what kind of color you would want to color setting colors, for example, and let's build the so we can say, so this is going to be display. Let's use the flex. Now we can show the label, etc. So we can call it div, and this tile we can call it min width, so it will be adjusted, for example 80, and here will be our, so we need to pass these in a curly braces, otherwise they will not be accepted. So we have here, so it should be the label, so label will be the first one. Let's see, and then we need to call this format selected option, so the property will be format options label. And this format selected options can be added here. Format selected option and format select option. So it's a label which we are sending from here. So it's using the value label and the value label. So we have value label and colors, and colors could be the, right now I'm just trying to just add a one color value. So for example, ff0 ff, and then later it could be added as a arrays of colors, and here you could use 0 ff0 colors. So colors are added into here. So we have value, label, and colors. So for this one, so select, and again I made exact same mistake here, that NIVO, and now we need to do the colors part. So we could say here that once we say the label, now we can do the div style, and we can say the align items and here we just span and back style background color should be the value of colors, and here we just need to create a space in BSP, and as you could see here, depending on the given value, colors will be start. So colors right now is added here. Oh, we made a mistake here. So, and depending on what you want to show, you could change this color. If you want to make this color to this, and this is how you could actually change the color. So if you have the value of array, you can send the value as an array and you could map it out. So if we have this value and we want to generate into the map, then the value should be added here, colors. So this value would be colors. So we need to have that many background. So how we could do, let's try very quick. So colors will be an array of 2 color. So we have got this array. Now we need to map it out because it's an array. So we can say colors dot map, and we need to say this here. So that will make it for us, and we need to set up return, and that will be our for each item, and that is going to be the color value. Key and as you see, 2 colors are there. If we want to make it wider, 1% BSP, and this is how you could create the color combination for you, and I think you can figure it out. I just gave some idea. So we have added bar, pie, bump, and color. You can add wherever you want to add the color graph. If you would want to decide this graph and convert this graph to the AreaBump, we can look into the property of AreaBump, how it is really created. So AreaBump is created based on a certain properties. AreaBump is similar to bump, but instead of only showing the ranking over the time, it also shows the values on the y-axis. So here we have bump, the responsive AreaBump. So actually it's a different component. So it means we need to build this responsive AreaBump. Let's use this. Bump. Here is our responsive bump. We call it responsive AreaBump. It uses the data. It is also going to be use the data and color scheme. So we just call it responsive AreaBump. So data and color schemes are there. We have, and we will call it color scheme. So data is data, color scheme will be this color scheme, and here is the responsive AreaBump, my responsive AreaBump. So let's see if we change this to reload. We need to responsive AreaBump are added. So we have responsive AreaBump available, and depending on setting, it can be this. Now we need to make sure that we can have a drop down to select which one we want, AreaBump or just regular bump. So we just call it is AreaBump, and set is AreaBump, and will be false. So initially the AreaBump is false. So we just need to change this AreaBump to true if we would want to make it true or false. Okay. So let's set up one of the property. Let's enable this property. Okay. And first is bump, second is AreaBump. So we have bump and AreaBump, and here value will be if value is equal to AreaBump true, otherwise okay, so set is AreaBump, and here will be also, we just need to tweak it, if bump and AreaBump, and then if value is equal to bump and the selected, so if active will be which one, active will be which value, it means is AreaBump is true, then the value will be AreaBump, otherwise value will be bump. So that's the active value. Now if AreaBump is equal to true, AreaBump, otherwise false, AreaBump, okay, set bump, and here if value equals to AreaBump, set the true, otherwise false. Is AreaBump. So now question, if AreaBump is equal to true, show this, otherwise show this, Oh, okay. Bump, area bump, bump, area bump. So these buttons are working. The only difference is that setting is not correct. So let's fix that. So active, which should be active here. So the logic for active, sorry, I'm just missing. So value active, the value of active will be whatever value. Okay, so we need to set the value here. So if that value or value is equal to okay, looks like now it's better. Bump, area bump. Okay, so these settings are also looking good. We have added the bump graph and area bump. Let's try to add the funnel. Funnel could be very interesting. So we have funnel here, and this funnel could be the vertical or horizontal. So we have vertical or horizontal funnel. We have smooth or linear. So the edges could be smooth or linear depending on what your selection can be. And the property related with graph. So those things can be added. So maybe that I could create another advanced version to build it, but next we are going to add the funnel in our project. So let's come and add support for funnel. So we call it NIVO funnel, import react from, and we just call it const NIVO funnel is the our project will be, and NIVO, if you do funnel here, and export default NIVO funnel, and here is our return. So NIVO funnel component is there. Next, we need to add support for funnel here. Route. So NIVO funnel, and here we are going to add one more. So this will be our NIVO funnel and NIVO funnel. We just want to make sure everything is corrected here. So delete in the routes. We can't have. Okay, so funnel is added here, and bar pi bump. We need to fix these bumps, so it's gonna be called the NIVO funnel because that part is coming into here. So now we have NIVO funnel. Everything looks right. Integration is correct. Data table NIVO funnel, and now we are going to integrate the NIVO funnel quickly. Before we go, let's try to take this code, NIVO funnel, just add here. And oh, we need card too. Oh. And add support for CoreUI components. We have got the NIVO funnel. We can live without this for a while. We don't need select options. And Let's remove this for a while. So NIVO funnel, we got NIVO funnel graph that's going to come here. Now look into the NIVO, we need to use the NIVO funnel. So we need to install modules. NIVO funnel, bump, select. NIVO funnel is added. Let's come back here. Import responsive funnel, and from NIVO funnel, that's perfect. Data, funnel data is this, funnel code is here. Here is our funnel code. Data will be here. And then we need to just take this code with the prop types error validation. This is a validation error, and it's going to be my responsive funnel, and prop type is the data. Color scheme is not used yet. We will keep it here. Prop types are not defined, so import prop types from prop types. So prop types are defined. NIVO funnel graph, we need to call this funnel. And data will be funnel data. Here is your funnel. Funnel is added very quickly. And now if you would want to add support for the color selection, we could use custom select option from the bump, and we could select. So here are the custom selection options. So these are the selected options. We can just add them very quickly here, and we just need to define the options here. So whether one option we could define in a common file here. So for example, if we just call it color options.js, here is the color options. Now let's fix the issue related with the color schemes. So color schemes are defined here. So we have changed the file name. So color scheme options has the scheme options, and this export const scheme options. So we are going to pull these scheme options here, import from color scheme options. So we got the scheme options. So this scheme options will be our value here. So now wherever we want to call this scheme options, we just call it object dot values, and it's going to use the scheme options. And same thing here. So this whole value will be used in place of scheme options. So we have got scheme options defined, and so scheme options are all set here. Now we just need to make sure that we could pass the scheme options here, the set color scheme. So set color scheme is already been defined. In this case, that's very simple. Then we just need to add color scheme here. Color scheme is equal to color scheme, and we need to make sure that we do handle the color scheme here in the funnel, and property will be the color scheme, and it will be the color scheme. Funnel, there you go. So now our color scheme is being updated. Spectral, accent, paired. So now we have the color scheme implemented. Next, if you would want to support color scheme with left and right, horizontal and vertical. We do have support for horizontal and vertical added in the very first NIVO bar. We are just going to copy that all code as it is. Don't need data table, pie, bump, no color scheme, funnel. Let's take this, then bar, add support for group button. So here is the vertical or horizontal. 3. So we have vertical and horizontal support, and now is the vertical. This is the variable. So it will be vertical or horizontal. Will be added here. We need to add support for vertical and horizontal in the properties, and this is the string. So prop types.string is required, and here will be the vertical or horizontal. So we have got that, and now we need to check where the vertical or horizontal is set. So direction optional, so direction is vertical and horizontal. So direction is set here in the funnel. So direction is there you go. We have horizontal and vertical is added. If we want to support the smooth versus linear, because it's a linear, if we want to support the smooth versus linear, now you see this is the smooth, we can also add one more parameter here, and it would be smooth versus linear. So now we have added the support for funnel also. So now we have 4 graph implementations. Let's take one more as a final one, and we will use that as the last one for this presentation. And here are the bullet chart. So 120, here is the range, here is the hit, and then temperature, power, volume, cost, revenue. Range, measure, and marker. So it has a range component, measure component, and marker component. So these are the properties, and so responsive bullet has the responsive bullet, and in the bullet and if you look into the data, here is the data. So data is temperature, range, measure, and marker. So everything is already being defined into the database. So whatever your source data is, as soon as it's defined properly, that bullet can be added very easily in our example. So let's have the bullet chart added, and that would be the fun for us. So we call it NIVO bullet.js, import React from React, and const function, and it will be NIVO bullet sorry, this is not function, so it should be just const NIVO bullet, export default NIVO bullet, and here is our return, and that's for NIVO bullet. Let's add the menu option. So funnel bullet, and now we need to add a route. We are going to add the NIVO bullet now. So we have added this, and now we need to create the route, so we could connect our component. So here is the NIVO bullet and reload dashboard bullet is a funnel, so we need to fix this to bullet. So this is the NIVO bullet, and it means the connection to the component page is accessible to us. Next, we just need to start implementing the code. So bullet, we need to add the component. So NIVO bullet is being added. After NIVO bullet, we need to start implementing. So this was our funnel. So let's add the NIVO bullet. So we have added card. We just called it NIVO bullet. Okay, and as of now, we do not need this custom select. We can use the funnel related code. So, and even we could change that one too. So it's a format selected option. So that actually help us to implement our color scheme. Color scheme need these two lines. So we have color scheme. We also need support for these. We have that, and then we need to have responsive bullet, and that should come from bullet. Set color scheme is part of this. So we have, and then use state. My responsive funnel is needed, which is I can comment it. NIVO bullet graph, and here just so everything is ready for us to implement the bullet chart. Let's take the data first. We call it const bullet data. After that, we need the code. So responsive bullet, we already pulled it, imported it. Here is the responsive bullet component. Data is already there. Color scheme will be sent. Data, we need to set up the properties so it will not give the lint errors. And it's going to be my responsive bullet. Data, color scheme. These two are added here, and wherever we are calling the my responsive bullet, data, color scheme, no vertical. Responsive bullet is not defined. Funnel data is not defined. Definitely somewhere I'm using the funnel data, which is not X 175. Bullet data. Here are the bullet graph, range colors. This is called the range colors. Looking to here, so range color is yellow, orange, red. So this is what needs to be set. Okay, so even that is also working. So now we do have the graphs related with our objective to build these 5 graphs: bar, pie, bump, funnel, and bullet. So these 5 graphs we have implemented in this project. So now this implementation looks like completed. So let's take this code and look into, this is our NIVO final, add it commit minus m, and then I will say NIVO graphs are added. Status, all, everything. Now we can look into the code. Here is our code, NIVO graphs final, and the code related with the project, it's in view, NIVO, and all that implementation is all here. It means the code is ready for anyone to try and follow up this tutorial. So that's all I had for you in this tutorial. Let's have a quick recap. In this tutorial, we used the CoreUI React admin template as our base, and we integrated NIVO graphics or graph library, which is based on D3 and React, to build few graphs in the CoreUI React code. We used the NIVO storybook implementation to get the graphs data as well as the code to integrate in our project. In this project, we implemented 5 main graphs. These are bar, pie, bump, funnel, and bullet graphs. We had a variation of some of these graphs, such as pie with donut, stacked bar with horizontal stacked bar, bump with AreaBump, and we also added the color schemes. We had some variation by switching the graph mode, either pie to donut, stacked, horizontal stacked to vertical stacked, AreaBump to bump, and these kinds of things. We also added the data table support in our graph, so we could show just by switching a button to explain the data is used for the given graph. So it was a fun project to see how we could implement the NIVO graphs in the CoreUI React project. I hope you have enjoyed this tutorial. It was great for me to have you in this journey. I hope that you have enjoyed the tutorial, and I'm looking forward to see you in my another tutorial. Until then, thank you. That's all, my friends. If you have enjoyed our content, please like it, share it, subscribe it. And finally, please remember, be good and do good. Thank you.